Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Just take a moment and think about the pace of life lately. It feels like the ground beneath our feet is shifting constantly, doesn't it? One day, a stable industry. The next, it's being completely reshaped by some, well, unforeseen disruption. We're talking about a world where unprecedented change can happen quite literally overnight. It's exhilarating, yes, but for many, it's also, frankly, incredibly overwhelming. How do you keep up when the very fabric of how work gets done is constantly being rewoven?
It's so true. We're witnessing a profound, almost like seismic shift in the fundamental structure of organizations and the flow of work. And it's driven by this exponential increase in information, a constant churn of new technologies, and, well, customer expectations that are evolving at light speed. What worked even a decade ago just isn't cutting it anymore.
And that's exactly why we're here today. Our mission is to give you a true shortcut, a direct route to being genuinely well-informed about this incredible transformation that's sweeping across nearly every industry you can imagine. We've poured over a stack of sources, specifically pulling rich, eye-opening insights from Stephen Denning's essential book, The Age of Agile, including that brilliant foreword by Gary Hamel. Consider these our frontline dispatches from the heart of a full-blown management revolution.
That's right. Because what we're exploring isn't just about, a trendy new process or some temporary buzzword. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into the age of Agile, which, as our sources powerfully emphasize, is a fundamentally different concept, a new mindset about the structure of your company and how you must operate to succeed in today's world. It's about more than just efficiency. It's really about existential survival and, well, thriving.
So what can you expect to gain from this deep dive? We're going to unpack what truly makes organizations agile. That is, how they become capable of delivering instant, intimate, frictionless value on a large scale. We'll explore the core principles that are driving success, share some truly surprising facts, and highlight real-world examples that definitively separate the winners from those, struggling to adapt in this relentlessly dynamic environment. We'll also candidly look at the dangerous traps that can derail even the most well-intentioned transformations and what all of this ultimately means for the future of work, for our businesses, and frankly, for society itself. Ready to unpack this?
Let's do it. Let's begin by laying the groundwork for understanding this new era. Our sources highlight that we are at the genesis of a new age, where change isn't just fast, it can be nearly instantaneous. Think about it. An agile organization is designed to connect everyone and everything all the time. This isn't just about internal communication. It's about a seamless flow of information and collaboration that enables that instant, intimate, frictionless value on a large scale we just mentioned.
And when you hear agile, a lot of listeners might immediately think of Silicon Valley's startup, small, nimble tech companies. But what's truly eye-opening from our sources is that this isn't confined to the digital native. Even incredibly complex, large-scale organizations, from Apple to Tesla, are demonstrating this capability. The book argues it's a fundamentally different concept, a new mindset, about how a company is structured and how it operates, envisioning an economy that is more innovative, more humane, and more inclusive. That's a huge promise for a management philosophy, isn't it?
It really is, and here's the kicker, something that profoundly shifts our perspective. The core distinction between companies that win and those that lose isn't primarily about access to cutting-edge technology or big data. We often assume, that the giants succeed because they have some secret tech advantage. But our sources make a really profound point. Technology and big data, those are increasingly becoming commodities. Most firms, even smaller ones, have access to similar tools and information. The real differentiator, the truly insightful takeaway here, is something far less tangible and far more foundational.
That's a crucial distinction, because you often hear people say, oh, they just had better tech or they had more data. But the book directly challenges that narrative. It uses the incredibly powerful and frankly tragic example of Kodak. Here was a firm that literally invented the core technology for digital photography. They had the cutting edge, but they failed to exploit it. So if they had the tech, if they had the foresight to invent it, what really went wrong there?
What went wrong was their good management. The very management practices that had worked for decades, for like a century even, became anachronistic. They were brilliant at managing chemical film production and distribution, but that operating system simply couldn't pivot to the rapid iteration and digital focus required for the new world. This really emphasizes that it's a different way of running the organization that deploys technology and data more nimbly. Trying to leverage cutting-edge technology with an outdated management approach is, as the source aptly puts it, like driving a horse and buggy on the freeway. You have the new capabilities, but your internal system just can't handle the speed and complexity. It's just not built for it.
So what exactly is driving this radical rethinking of how we manage? The source points to what's widely known as a VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That perfectly describes the environment we're all navigating, doesn't it? Where the ground is constantly shifting.
Precisely. In such a world, traditional, rigid planning cycles fail because there are simply too many unknowns, too many variables shifting while you're still, drawing up the blueprints. The new paradigm of agile management enabled organizations to nimbly adapt and upgrade products and services to meet rapidly changing technology and customer needs. It's about building in the capacity to respond continuously, to learn and adjust on the fly, rather than trying to plan for a static future that simply doesn't exist anymore.
It's also incredibly interesting to trace the origins of Agile. While it became heavily associated with software development after the Agile Manifesto in 2001, its historical roots lie in manufacturing, with the quality movement in Japan and the Toyota production system. That was a genuine surprise to me when I first read it, because you just don't typically associate Agile with, like, car factories.
It's a critical point for understanding its broader applicability and its profound impact. Toyota, for instance, didn't just build cars, they revolutionized how manufacturing itself was conceived. They introduced practices like disaggregating the production process, breaking it down into smaller, manageable parts, and experimenting with small production runs and rapid changeovers. This was radical at the time because conventional wisdom dictated mass production in huge batches for efficiency. But Toyota proved that small, iterative batches were often more efficient, more adaptable, and ultimately more quality focused. It defied traditional common sense about scale.
Right. And now we're seeing agile concepts spread far beyond just software manufacturing. The book provides some truly fantastic and diverse examples. National Public Radio uses Agile for developing new programming and content. John Deere applies it for designing and producing heavy machinery, and even Saab leverages it for building fighter jets. And it's not just product development. Within internal functions, Intrinus uses it in marketing to launch campaigns more effectively, and C.H. Robinson applies it in human resources for talent acquisition and management. This isn't just for tech companies anymore. It seems like it's becoming a universal operating principle.
And that spread is only accelerating because, as the source notes, the lines between industries are blurring at an incredible rate. Physical products and services are increasingly software-driven, and the Internet of Things makes its presence felt. This means your car is becoming a computer on wheels, your thermostat is talking to your phone, your factory floor is connected by sensors. The list goes on. This disintegration of the distinction between software and manufacturing creates a natural, almost irresistible impetus for all firms to adopt agile methods. It's no longer optional for many.
What's perhaps most fascinating here, or maybe challenging, is that Agile isn't a single project you finish or a one-and-done implementation. The book powerfully stresses that the new management paradigm is a journey, not a destination. You don't just arrive and declare, okay, we are now Agile.
Yeah.
It involves never-ending innovation and continuous improvements to management practices themselves. It's a constant evolution.
This raises an important question, one the source directly addresses. We need to be extremely wary of fake change. Some organizations, the book warns, merely apply a thin veneer of agile terminology over their traditional bureaucracy. They might use terms like sprint or scrum, but fundamentally they're doing what they've always done, just with a new name. Lipstick on a pig, kind of. True agile requires continuous commitment, a profound shift in mindset and leadership that understands it's about culture and structure, not just process. Without that, it's just theater.
Okay, so now that we have a solid grasp of this revolution in motion, let's turn our attention to the core operating system of this new paradigm. Our sources distill the essence of Agile into three fundamental laws that represent a fundamentally different concept of what an organization is and how it must operate. They are the law of the small team, the law of the customer, and the law of the network. Let's start by unpacking the first one, the law of the small team.
Right. The law of the small team is perhaps the best known aspect of Agile, particularly from its early implementations in software development. The core principle is deceptively simple. Work in principle should be done in small teams working in short cycles. But the power of this principle lies in its deep implications for efficiency, quality, and human engagement.
So instead of tackling one giant monolithic problem with a huge centralized team over a long drawn-out period, what happens instead? Organizations adopting this law deliberately disaggregate big, difficult problems into small batches.
Oh, right.
These small batches are then handled by small, cross-functional, autonomous teams working iteratively in short cycles in a state of flow, with fast feedback from customers and end users. What does that actually look like in practice day to day?
It involves several key common practices that really reinforce each other. First, short iterative work cycles, typically 1, 2, or maybe 3 weeks. Firms learn very quickly that these grand, complex plans often fail just because there are too many unknowns and too much time passes before you get any real feedback. So the response is small everything. Small batches, small teams, short cycles. This forces constant validation and adaptation.
Okay, short cycles. Then you have the formation of small, cross-functional teams. The rule of thumb for these teams is often 7 plus or minus 2 people, though I imagine this can vary quite a bit based on the context.
Oh, absolutely. But the critical aspect is that these teams are small enough and have diverse enough skills within them to complete something potentially of value to a customer within that short cycle. They don't have to wait on another department to finish their piece, which is a huge bottleneck in traditional systems.
Makes sense. What else?
Another crucial practice is limited work in process, or WIP. This reduces the risk of work just piling up in queues, creating bottlenecks, and delaying value delivery. Teams focus intently on what can actually be completed within each cycle, fostering a sense of urgency and, completion. And finally, autonomous teams. Within basic rules of the road or guiding principles set by leadership, the teams themselves decide how to get the work done. This autonomy is where innovation truly flourishes.
And what's the human impact of organizing work this way? It's not just about speed and efficiency on paper, is it? It also consistently leads to higher performance and highly engaged employees. The book describes this as being in a psychological state of flow, where people are energized, fully involved, and genuinely enjoying their work. What exactly is flow in this context?
Right, flow. It's a concept popularized by the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. It's that state of deep, immersive concentration where you're so engaged in an activity that you lose track of time, and the task itself feels intrinsically rewarding. In an agile context, it happens when teams have clear goals, immediate feedback, and the autonomy to act. Contrast that with traditional, fragmented work where employees might feel like, cogs in a machine, constantly interrupted and distant from the ultimate outcome. Agile cultivates environments where people actually want to work, where their heart of the engineer, as the source puts it, is truly emancipated.
That sounds ideal. A fantastic example of this in action is Menlo Innovations, a software firm led by Richard Sheridan, which aims to produce emergency-free software. That's a bold claim. Sheridan speaks less about the technicalities of Agile and more about fostering joy in the workplace. His philosophy is about emancipating the heart of the engineer, allowing them to delight people with their creations, rather than just mechanically fulfilling requirements.
Yeah, and Menlo has a truly unique approach to team continuity. Unlike most agile firms like, say, Microsoft or Ericsson that try to keep teams together for long periods to build cohesion, Menlo actually rotates pairs of engineers daily.
Daily. Wow.
Yeah. Their reasoning is brilliant, though. It ensures that knowledge isn't trapped inside the team and that their software isn't dependent on any single individual leaving. The ultimate goal. Software that doesn't require user manuals or help desks. It's an extreme example, maybe, but it perfectly illustrates the continuous learning and knowledge-sharing ethos.
That kind of dynamic team structure scales in surprising ways, even to some of the most complex products imaginable. Think about the Apple iPhone. Apple didn't build one super complex device with a huge centralized organization. Instead, they scaled down a massive complex problem into tiny bite-sized pieces for small, independent teams. This iterative modular approach allowed for a highly customizable device that hundreds of millions of users now tailor to their individual needs, a feat that, as our sources point out, would have been inconceivable with traditional management methods.
Exactly. Or consider something as intricate as the Saab Gripen fighter jet. An IHS Jane study found the Gripen has the lowest operational cost among advanced fighters. Why? Because Saab implemented agile practices, involving customers directly in testing in 3-week cycles.
3-week cycles for a fighter jet.
Yep. This resulted in faster, more relevant development as design flaws were caught and corrected early, and the product was ready for market and generating revenue much sooner. It's a real-world example of how small cycles and direct customer feedback create tangible, significant financial benefits.
Even our cars are becoming more agile, aren't they? Tesla, for instance, updates cars it has already sold through over-the-air software downloads, adding new capabilities like automatic braking or even adjusting acceleration or range. As Elon Musk famously stated, it's like updating your phone or your laptop. Cars are transforming from static mechanical machines into flexible electronic devices, allowing for continuous improvement and value delivery even after purchase. It's a profound shift in what finished even means.
Which brings us perfectly to the law of the customer. The book frames this as the most important law, the one that makes sense of all the others and truly drives the agile revolution. And it starts with a really radical idea from Peter Drucker way back in 1954. There is only one valid definition of business purpose: to create a customer.
Now, for some listeners, that might sound incredibly obvious. What made that statement so radical then, and frankly still so crucial today? Doesn't every business try to create a customer?
Well, it was radical because it contrasted sharply with the then dominant and honestly still pervasive view that a business exists primarily to make money. Drucker's proposition was a kind of Copernican revolution for business. Just as Copernicus moved Earth from the center of the universe, Drucker argued, and the internet later proved, that an epical change occurred where power shifted definitively from the seller to the buyer. No longer could firms just dictate, "You take what we make." The customer moved to the absolute center of the commercial universe. Now, firms must not just satisfy customers, they have to actively delight them, because customers have infinite choices and instant access to information. Spotify's Discover Weekly playlist is a perfect illustration of this customer centricity in action, right? In 2015, two software engineers had this seemingly simple but utterly game-changer idea: solve the problem of users finding new music they would genuinely love, rather than just offering what they already know. What's truly impressive is the speed. It was deployed to 75 million users in just 4 months from the initial concept. That's incredibly fast for that scale. And the user experience is phenomenal. That personalized playlist of 30 songs updated every Monday feels like a gift from a talented and knowledgeable musical friend. Users frequently say it's spooky how fresh and familiar it feels, almost as if Spotify knows them better than they know themselves. Within 6 months of its launch, it had generated billions of streams. This innovation isn't a one-off. It perfectly demonstrates how Spotify continues to pursue agile management and innovates faster than its competitors by putting the customer at the absolute center of every decision.
Okay, Spotify is one thing, but now consider Barclays, a 327-year-old transatlantic bank with, over 100,000 employees?
Huh.
The idea of them becoming as agile as a tech company like Spotify might seem utterly ridiculous on the surface. They operate in a highly regulated, intensely complex environment, still recovering from a financial crisis, grappling with Brexit challenges, deeply entrenched legacy data structures, and old processes that make instant, frictionless, intimate banking experiences incredibly difficult. So how do they even begin?
It's an immense challenge, no doubt. Old banking meant personal relationships built over decades, slow processes, and often, frankly, inconvenience. New customer expectations demand speed, personalization, and seamless digital interaction. The good news, or the interesting part, is that Barclays' transformation isn't being imposed from above in a typical top-down command and control fashion. Instead, it's inspired and supported from on high, meaning leadership acts more like enablers, removing impediments. This has apparently led to strong psychological buy-in at the working level. It's still early days, the sources, but they are definitively on the journey. This highlights that even the most venerable, deeply entrenched institutions can embrace this mindset if they approach it correctly.
So, the law of the customer involves several key practices that differentiate truly agile organizations. There's a shared goal of delighting the customer, not just as a marketing slogan, but as an operational mandate where everyone is passionately focused on the customer. This also requires an absolute consistency of messaging from the C-suite, right? No mixed messages where staff hear customer first, but Wall Street hears short-term profits.
Exactly. And top management's role isn't about micromanaging daily tasks. It's to identify and support champions of Agile within the organization and to inspire, enable, and unleash innovation from the bottom up.
Hmm.
This means even back office functions like HR and finance, which traditionally focus inward, need to align their processes to serve the ultimate customer, even if indirectly. The book points out that monetization making money is the result of delighting customers, not the primary goal. When value is delivered faster and more consistently, gains are naturally seen on both pricing power and cost efficiency. It kind of follows naturally.
Okay, this brings us to the third and final law, the law of the network. We've seen how individual agile teams are incredibly effective, but the real challenge for large organizations is scaling this energy and efficiency to large groups of teams and agencies without creating chaos.
Mhm.
How do you maintain the benefits of small teams across an entire enterprise? How do you connect them?
This is where General Stanley McChrystal's compelling story of transforming the U.S. Joint Special Operations Task Force in Iraq becomes so instructive. It's a really powerful example. Initially, they were a slow, authority-based bureaucracy plagued by stratification and silos, and a deeply ingrained reluctance to share resources and information on a strict need-to-know basis. Their structure, though effective in other contexts perhaps, was simply too slow and siloed to combat a fluid, decentralized adversary like al-Qaeda in Iraq. They were losing.
So what changed? The radical shift McChrystal implemented was from that rigid need to know to everyone knows everything. He completely reversed the traditional information flow, transforming a pyramid hierarchy to a competence-based network. Decisions were no longer based on who was highest up the chain of command, but on who was best placed to make them, regardless of their position. What did that look like day to day?
It involved very practical, intentional changes to foster this network. They created open physical spaces for serendipitous encounters, encouraging informal information exchange. The water cooler effect, but amplified. They instituted daily operational sync briefings involving hundreds of people across the globe via video conference to cultivate a shared consciousness across the entire force. Everyone knew the latest intelligence, and crucially, they pushed decision-making and ownership down to the lowest possible level, empowering those closest to the action. McChrystal himself described his own profound transition from a heroic leader who makes all the calls to a humble gardener who simply fosters the environment for others to excel. Quite a shift in leadership style.
Now, many critics argue against large networks, citing the Dunbar number, which posits a cognitive limit to stable social relationships, typically around 150 people. The idea being you can't genuinely connect with or trust more people than that. So how do large agile organizations overcome this?
Well, the sources offer powerful counterexamples that seem to defy this perceived limit. Riot Games, Spotify, Ericsson's network management, and Microsoft's developer division, all operating effectively with over 1,000 people. How do they do it?
Yeah, and there are even larger examples, right?
Absolutely. Like Alcoholics Anonymous, with over 2 million members distributed across more than 100,000 small groups, or Rick Warren's Saddleback Church, these are massive networks. The key elements for these large networks to work seem to include, first, a compelling goal that unites everyone. Second, being built from small groups, where the organization is the groups, not just a collection of individuals. And third, the legal framework or traditional hierarchy staying largely in the background, with a true hierarchy of competence, not just authority, taking precedence in daily operations. It's about distributed trust and responsibility.
Let's delve into Microsoft's fascinating journey in implementing Agile at scale. Many of us still perceive Microsoft as maybe a giant battleship, strong, formidable, but perhaps a bit slow to turn. However, the book reveals it's now less like a giant battleship and more like a flotilla of speedboats. That's a huge shift in perception and a testament to their transformation.
It truly is. They made a very public commitment to Agile and Scrum back in 2011, shifting their entire developer division to Agile practices. They now operate on 3-week sprints that continue in a steady rhythm through holidays and corporate changes. It's ingrained. What they found most difficult, apparently, was the profound shift in mindset, moving from being strictly date-driven to truly value-driven, and fundamentally understanding what getting fully done in every sprint actually means. It took about a year, the source says, for everyone to grasp that done means fully shippable, with setup, testing, and upgrades all included, not just code complete.
Okay, so what were the practical keys to scaling Agile effectively at Microsoft? What made it work there?
First, achieving the right balance of alignment and autonomy. Leadership sets the rules of the road, things like roles, quality limits, and overall strategic direction. But teams have immense autonomy in how they do the work. This fosters a fun, experimental environment where things get done without chaos or stagnation. It's guided freedom.
And the manager role changes completely.
Drastically. The role of the Agile manager transforms. They don't monitor burn-down charts or micromanage tasks. Their primary job is identifying and removing impediments that block teams from doing their best work. It's about enabling, coaching, and supporting, not dictating or controlling. Servant leadership, in a way.
Okay. Well,
Another crucial element is continuous integration. Teams integrate code all day, every day. If a team breaks the build, they fix it immediately, often within minutes. This prevents technical and integration debt from accumulating, which can absolutely cripple projects down the line. They also wisely use feature flags to isolate changes. Think of it like building a new room in your house behind a hidden door.
okay.
You can work on it, perfect it, and only when it's ready do you flip a switch and open the door to everyone. It lets them innovate without disrupting the main system.
That sounds smart. And this ties directly into DevOps and continuous delivery, right?
Exactly. Teams at Microsoft own the entire life of the feature, from planning and execution to delivery and operation, including fixing any bugs that arise in production. There's no one else to blame, which strongly fosters quality and dramatically reduces the lead time on bug fixes. It's true end-to-end accountability.
And self-forming teams are also mentioned.
Yes, that's key too. Microsoft encourages teams to take ownership of tasks and their backlog of work. Managers engage in constant conversation and mutual trust with teams, fostering a give-and-take dynamic rather than just top-down commands. It's a subtle but powerful shift in power and responsibility.
And this idea that the team is the product, that sounds like a significant shift from traditional accounting or asset management.
It really is. The true business asset is increasingly seen as a team that is capable of delivering products rather than just the product itself. Microsoft sees this as a long-term investment in people and their collective capability. Build the team and the products will follow.
And quality, how do they handle that?
They focus intensely on building quality from the beginning, completely avoiding those dreaded stabilization sprints at the end of a project just for bug fixing. The rule is simple and non-negotiable. Deliver a finished product every sprint. This eliminates the bad habit of deferring quality issues and forces high standards up front. It's about discipline. And finally, none of this large-scale Agile transformation would have been possible without strong top-level support from leaders like Corporate Vice President Brian Harry, who really championed the shift. You need that air cover.
Beyond these internal structures, platforms are proving to be powerful shapers of massive scale and flexibility too. Apple, for example, achieves massive scale through its platform, enabling hundreds of thousands of developers to create millions of apps for millions of users, each customizable to individual needs. It's a whole ecosystem of innovation.
Precisely. Similarly, Autodesk, a leader in CAD/CAM software, has created a platform where independent communities develop applications for complex fields like construction and civil engineering, allowing users to simulate projects before ever breaking ground. Even industrial giants like General Electric, GE, and Siemens are developing cloud-based systems that connect machines and devices across factories, facilitating transactions, operations, and data analysis at an unprecedented scale. This externalization of the change burden allows for rapid scaling and constant adaptation far beyond what a single company could achieve internally. It leverages the network effect.
When implementing Agile, firms can take different approaches, can't they? There's the Big Bang approach, exemplified by Salesforce, where change is rolled out across the entire organization at once. This contrasts with a gradualist bottom-up approach, which our sources warn often fails to gain critical mass, or a combination approach as seen with Barclays and Ericsson, integrating elements of both.
Yeah, and Salesforce's Big Bang was successful precisely because they carefully avoided 6 common mistakes that often trip companies up. They didn't introduce it as just another business process. Their top management was fully committed, not just verbally. They focused on agile principles like customer value rather than just the mechanics of Scrum. They avoided micromanagement. They sidestepped tool addiction, meaning they didn't get bogged down in buying fancy software before understanding the mindset. And crucially, they avoided that stabilization sprint where bugs are deferred. This disciplined, principle-driven approach enabled a rapid and successful transformation, but it takes real commitment.
Okay, so we've seen what Agile is, how it works, and how it scales across diverse industries. It sounds powerful. But the path to agility isn't always smooth, is it? Agile transformations don't happen in a vacuum. They often meet deeply rooted patterns and processes that they will have to unlearn. These are the insidious traps that can derail organizations, even those with the best intentions. Let's talk about those.
Absolutely. The first, and perhaps most significant, is the shareholder value trap. This is a big one. The core problem is the fundamental tension between Agile's deep-seated goal of delighting customers and the pervasive goal in most publicly owned corporations, maximizing shareholder value as reflected in the current stock price. End quote. These two goals are often, in practice, diametrically opposed. What's good for the short-term stock price isn't always good for the long-term customer or the business itself.
It's a real corruption of the game, isn't it?
Right.
The book uses a vivid football analogy, which I thought was great. Imagine coaches compensate not for winning games, but for covering the point spread. So instead of focusing on coaching and strategy, they spend most of their time talking to stock analysts, manipulating numbers. That's precisely what many CEOs end up doing, leading to a profound misalignment with the real game of business, delivering value to customers.
The irony is just so rich here. Even Jack Welch, once hailed as a heroic exemplar of shareholder value during his time as GE CEO, later called it the dumbest idea in the world, stressing that shareholder value is a result, not a strategy. And its origins are surprisingly recent, emerging only in the 1970s, driven by Milton Friedman's arguments and the so-called agency problem, the idea that managers might not act in shareholders' best interests. This ultimately created a mandate for finance to take charge, prioritizing short-term financial engineering over long-term value creation.
And the unanticipated risks of this singular focus are frankly alarming, as highlighted in the source. This is a chilling list. It leads to less entrepreneurial firms, decreased investment in R&D and growth, job losses, and a significant decline in true innovation. It spurred massive outsourcing and the dismantling corporations. Worse, it has directly contributed to worsening income inequality and a dramatic rise in financial misconduct, with banks incurring billions in fines for illegal activities, yet often without any senior executive punishment. It sounds like a recipe for dispirited employees and a struggling real economy.
And a prime, almost addictive example of this trap in action is what the source powerfully calls the corporate cocaine of share buybacks.
Wow.
Yeah. These are described as stock price manipulation on a macroeconomic scale, giving temporary boosts to stock prices, but systematically killing long-term value for shareholders. Trillions of dollars have been spent on buybacks over the last decade, often directly at the expense of investing in truly market-creating innovations, or even just basic employee training and development. It's like a company selling off its furniture to pay for a temporary party, leaving nothing for the long haul. It's just extracting value, not creating it.
This creates a stark choice, doesn't it? A fundamental fork in the road. A focus on customer value creates a virtuous cycle. Engaged staff, continuous innovation, delighted customers, and ultimately long-term sustainable shareholder value. Conversely, shareholder value thinking often creates a vicious cycle of value extraction, increased bureaucracy, and dispirited staff, cannibalizing the very foundation of the business for fleeting gains.
Thankfully, there are alternative models demonstrating the virtuous cycle. Amazon, for instance, has long prioritized market leadership and customer delight as its ultimate goal, often operating at razor-thin margins, much to the chagrin of early investors. Their long-term strategy, despite initial skepticism, has been handsomely rewarded by the stock market over time. Similarly, Unilever CEO Paul Polman famously refused to give quarterly guidance, focusing instead on sustainable value creation, environmental stewardship, and social impact. And despite initial stock drops and intense investor pressure, his long-term approach ultimately led to soaring share prices and enduring prosperity. It can be done differently.
Okay, let's move to the second trap, the cost-oriented economics trap. This mindset, often embodied by chief financial officers, traditionally focuses intensely on cost-cutting and internal efficiency, rooted in theories like Ronald Coase's idea that firms exist primarily to reduce transaction costs. It's all about squeezing every last drop of efficiency out of existing processes, right?
Right. But the problem is, in today's economy, especially with software and complex knowledge products, adding more value to customers at lower cost has become steadily more important than internal efficiency. The unit costs for digital products often approach zero after initial development. So, competitive advantage now lies not just in how cheaply you can produce something, but fundamentally in the value added to the customer experience, the innovation, the delight. Cost isn't the only lever anymore.
The Dell Inc. case study is a truly cautionary tale here, isn't it? Dell made a calculated decision to offshore its manufacturing and even significant parts of its design to Sustec in Taiwan, primarily to cut costs and improve short-term profits. It seemed like good management at the time, a rational economic decision based on the numbers, but it turned out to be a long-term disaster. Dell became hardly more than a brand, losing the technical expertise it needed to innovate and grow its business, and worse, creating a formidable future competitor to Sustec, which had now learned Dell's entire playbook. How could they have missed that?
Well, this decision, and many like it across various industries, suffered from significant missing costs in their calculation. They didn't account for the risks of long-distance supply chains, the eventual closing wage differentials, the invaluable lost knowledge and expertise within the company, and the profound long-term cost of literally creating a competitor. The source calls it stupidity in the story, arguing it was never good management to begin with, but rather short-sighted financial engineering dressed up as efficiency. This approach has led to a permanent loss of expertise across significant sectors of U.S. industry, impacting our national capability to invent and manufacture next-gen high-tech products. It's had huge ripple effects.
But there can be surprising reversals, as you mentioned. The book highlights a truly counterintuitive outcome when General Electric GE brought appliance manufacturing back from China to Kentucky. According to traditional cost-cutting logic, this should have increased costs dramatically. But what actually happened?
It's amazing. Material costs went down, labor costs went down, quality went up, and energy efficiency went up. It completely defied the conventional wisdom often used to justify offshoring. It showed the hidden costs were real.
This cost-oriented mindset also creates these hidden liabilities you mentioned. Technical debt, regulatory debt, and brand debt, none of which appear on a traditional balance sheet until it's often too late.
Exactly. The Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal is a prime example. They accumulated massive technical debt from rushed, fraudulent software work. They then incurred immense regulatory debt, evidenced by an $18.32 billion provision for flouting environmental regulations, a staggering sum. And finally, they suffered multi-billion-dollar brand debt due to lost customer confidence and a shattered reputation, which takes years, maybe decades, to repair. All these were direct consequences of a cost-oriented mindset that prioritized short-term gains and perceived internal efficiencies over long-term quality, compliance, and customer trust.
Yet even within a cost-oriented perspective, Agile offers a powerful case for itself, doesn't it? It systematically reduces low-value work and delivers value to customers earlier, which directly improves revenue streams and significantly reduces risk. The Ericsson example we mentioned earlier, where they delivered value to clients 1 to 2 years earlier by adopting Agile, is a clear, undeniable financial advantage that even the most cost-focused CFO should appreciate. It's about delivering more for less in a sustainable way.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the final trap, the backward-looking strategy trap. This is the insidious illusion that future success can be logically deduced from its past, that if you just analyze enough historical data, crunch enough numbers, you can predict and plan for the future with certainty. In a VUCA world, this is a dangerous fantasy. The future isn't just an extension of the past.
The collapse of Michael Porter's own strategy consulting firm, Monitor Group, is such an ironic and powerful example of this trap. Porter, famous for his strategic frameworks like the 5 Forces, built his firm on the idea of analyzing past industry structures to find sustainable competitive advantage. Yet, his own firm failed to predict its own future or adapt to changing realities, ultimately collapsing into bankruptcy, is quite telling.
It is. Porter's 5 Forces framework analyzing supplier power, buyer power, threat of new entrants, threat of substitutes, and rivalry to position a firm for competitive advantage assumes a largely fixed industry structure, and that competition is the primary concern. The critique from our sources is that this framework views business as a zero-sum game, where the pie is fixed and you're just fighting for a larger slice. It fundamentally misses Drucker's core insight of creating a customer and actually expanding the pie. This backward-looking mindset often leads to firms just doing more of the same with incremental improvements rather than pursuing true market-creating innovation.
This stands in stark contrast to how military strategy has evolved, right? Traditional detailed command is deterministic and top-down, much like a classic bureaucracy. Follow the plan exactly. But mission command, which is probabilistic and decentralized, embraces spontaneity, initiative, and cooperation. It aligns perfectly with Agile management.
Yes, it focuses on harnessing capability and decision-making power at all levels, not just the top. It's about empowering frontline soldiers or employees to respond to a dynamic battlefield or marketplace, not waiting for orders from HQ.
So the Agile approach to strategy radically shifts the focus, from anticipating and battling competition to proactively addressing future customer needs. Key questions become things like, how will customers meet their needs in the future? What are the larger needs, only part of which are addressed by current products and services? What approach can our organization take to help meet those needs in a profitable fashion?
Exactly. It's a proactive, outward-looking value creation mindset, not a defensive, inward-looking one.
What's truly exciting is that Agile strategy also emphasizes emancipating strategy from the sole province of top management, actively including the whole organization in its formulation. This dramatically eliminates the handover hurdle between strategy formulation and execution, which is a major reason why even brilliant strategies often fail, right? They're developed in a vacuum and then simply handed down for implementation with no real buy-in or understanding from those doing the actual work.
Precisely. This leads to what the book calls strategic agility, identifying it as the next frontier beyond mere operational agility, which is about efficiency and quality. Strategic agility isn't just about doing existing things better. It's about generating market-creating innovations by transforming non-customers into customers. Think of the personal computer, the iPhone, or even Starbucks coffee. These weren't about resolving existing complaints. They were about imagining and delivering something that delights whole new groups of people who didn't even know they needed it. They created new markets.
And it often involves counterintuitive principles, doesn't it? It means explicitly focusing on non-users, those who aren't currently using your product or service. Why aren't they? What would bring them in? Or sometimes strategically eliminating features to simplify and reduce costs, as Southwest Airlines famously did by cutting out reserved seating and meals to offer reliable, low-cost, friendly point-to-point service. Less was more in their case.
And there's a systematic approach to fostering this market-creating innovation. The NABC framework need approach, benefits per costs, competition. This iterative process asks 4 fundamental questions. What is the customer's unmet need? What is our unique approach to meeting it? What are the benefits of our approach per the cost to the customer, the value proposition? And how is this genuinely superior to the competition or the status quo? This ensures new innovations are well-grounded in real customer needs, have a viable approach, offer clear benefits, and consider the competitive landscape, all iterated until the value proposition is truly compelling.
Kirk Carlson's leadership at SRI, Stanford Research Institute, is a fantastic real-world example of this framework in action. He transformed a supposedly dysfunctional organization into a serial innovator by relentlessly focusing on value creation using the NABC framework. He built deep trust, motivated through achievement, the thrill of creating something valuable and communicated constantly, even having lunch with staff daily to discuss their NABC value propositions. He never talked about changing the culture directly, but changed the basic way in which work got done, and the culture naturally followed. Change the system, change the behavior.
Yeah, and this also challenges a common misconception. While lean startup thinking is excellent for iterating and improving existing features based on data, market-creating innovations often require large investments and big bets without initial hard data to justify them. You have to take a leap based on insight. A lean startup mindset, if applied too rigidly and overly focused on minimal viable products and rapid data validation, might inadvertently neglect these crucial, larger opportunities that redefine entire markets. You need both approaches.
And once again, thinking platforms comes into play as a massive scaling mechanism for innovation. Firms like Apple, Autodesk, GE, and Siemens don't try to develop every single solution internally. Instead, they create massive ecosystems where hundreds of thousands of others can develop solutions, effectively relieving the burden of internal scaling and allowing for massive reach and customization.
Absolutely. Ultimately, what separates success from failure in this new age often comes down to a profound bias for action. Nokia, for example, intellectually understood digitization and the mobile internet, but fatally lacked the bias for action needed to capitalize on it, letting Apple and others completely leapfrog them. Knowing isn't enough. You have to do.
So where does all this leave us? Our sources present a really stark crossroads for organizations and indeed for society as a whole. Those stuck in the traps we just discussed, the shareholder value trap, cost-oriented economics, and backward-looking strategy, will likely lead to a sputtering real economy, widespread despair, and unraveling social fabric. It's a pretty bleak vision of decline.
It is. While those embracing Agile, the sources suggest, will experience healthy investments, energized workforces, continuous innovation, and strong returns. It's a clear divergence, a choice between stagnation and growth, between a bleak future and a potentially vibrant one.
Carlota Perez's historical analysis, detailed in the source, provides a crucial context here. She describes past technological revolutions, from canals and rail to steel, mass production, and now computers communications, each followed by periods of intense financial speculation and, inevitably, crashes. But crucially, golden ages occurred after these crashes, when the financial sector reconnected with the real economy, investing in productive capacity and innovation, leading to broad prosperity. Think post-WWII. Nuclear winters resulted, as arguably we saw post-2008, when the casino economy of short-term financial engineering persisted unchecked, benefiting the few, not the many.
And the deep concern, as the book argues, is that society is currently at risk of perpetuating this egregious behavior with an oversized financial sector and, some would argue, weak regulation. The casino economy rolls on, extracting value rather than creating it, putting us at risk of another nuclear winter rather than ushering in a true golden age built on sustainable innovation.
Agile, then, isn't just about business efficiency or productivity. It's presented as a profoundly transformative idea that challenges fundamental assumptions about how organizations and even society should function. It offers a powerful critique on multiple fronts. Legally, it argues that massive share buybacks, $7 trillion over a decade according to the source, are effectively stock price manipulation.
Wow, that's a strong claim.
It is. Morally, it asserts that institutionalized self-interest through value extraction is unethical, undermining the various societal values we claim to uphold, like fairness and shared prosperity.
It even offers a compelling political critique, presenting a vision of society that is egalitarian in spirit, aspiring to create prosperity for all rather than extract value for the few. It's deeply rooted in ideas of individual freedom and self-management and entrepreneurialism, empowering people, not controlling them. And philosophically, it corrects a fundamental confusion: goals and results. Shareholder value, in this view, is a result of a healthy business focused on customers, not its primary goal. Getting that order right is critical.
This transformative idea calls for an urgent agenda for action, doesn't it? Starting with those at the top. Corporate boards must shift executive incentives away from short-term profits towards customer value. This isn't just a tweak, it's a fundamental reorientation of what success looks like and how it's rewarded.
Chief financial officers must redefine their function to truly support customer value creation, even if it means a shift in power away from their traditional short-term profit focus. It's about becoming strategic partners in value creation, not just, the guardians of the bottom line in the narrowest sense.
Institutional investors, the large funds and asset managers who hold so much sway, have a responsibility to stop rewarding short-term gains and instead focus on real value for shareholders, i.e. customer delight. Understanding that long-term value creation is the real return they should be seeking.
Politicians, the source argues, must stand up and fight for what is right, resisting the immense influence of corporate lobbyists who often champion policies that perpetuate the status quo and the shareholder value trap. That's a tall order, but seen as necessary.
Business schools, which have often been complicit in teaching these potentially outdated ideas, need to rewrite their economic textbooks that blindly embrace shareholder value theory. Instead, they must teach that the primary purpose of the corporation is to create a customer. It's about fundamentally changing the curriculum for future leaders.
The media and financial analysts also have a critical responsibility to upgrade their thinking on corporate performance, looking beyond daily stock price fluctuations to the real drivers of long-term value creation, asking different questions.
And finally, thought leaders across all sectors must forge active global coalitions to address these systemic dysfunctions and advance a better way forward, ensuring these vital discussions move beyond academic circles into public discourse and, hopefully, action.
The promise of this emerging age of Agile is truly inspiring, despite the challenges. It offers the possibility of a great awakening, a transformation where organizations and society can truly function differently, more harmoniously. The book highlights the beauty of small is beautiful. Agile architecture is like the early Renaissance, celebrating human scale and ingenuity, rather than the intimidating, overly complex Gothic cathedrals of traditional bureaucracy.
Ultimately, it seems, it's about reclaiming the dignity of man and woman, of course, a focus on human beings creating delight for other human beings. This deep, human-centric shift leads to organizations and societies that are potentially at one with itself, with its customers, its people, and the wider world, fostering a more prosperous and humane future for all. It's quite a vision.
It really is. What an incredible journey we've taken today. We've unpacked a powerful, profound shift that's redefining the very essence of work. From the core principles of Agile, the law of the small team, the law of the customer, and the law of the network.
Right, and then diving into those dangerous traps that consistently hinder progress, like the shareholder value trap, cost-oriented economics, and the pitfalls of backward-looking strategy.
It's clear that this isn't just some academic exercise in management theory. This deep dive should really prompt you, the listener, to consider what these insights mean for your world, your team, your organization, or even your industry.
Yeah, absolutely. How can you apply the Agile mindset? How can you foster strategic agility in your sphere of influence? And perhaps most importantly, how can you recognize and avoid these insidious traps in your organization? Because they are everywhere. The age of Agile is here, and it's forcing a fundamental choice for all of us. In this era of unprecedented change and critical decisions, the question for your organization, and perhaps even for society itself, is not if change is happening, but whether it's going to lead or follow. How will you contribute to creating a golden age for work and for humanity? Something to really think about.